I'm Amichai Stein, diplomatic correspondent to Israel Khan TV, joining us live from Jerusalem. Amichai Stein, thank you so much for being with us here on WION Dispatch. Help us understand this situation at this point in time. It's complex because you have seen what happened in the funerals for Qasem Soleimani, and you've seen the entire situation turn. And especially things have gone down south for Iran after the admission that it was them who were to blame for the downing of the Ukrainian passenger plane.
Now, what we are hearing, I think we are hearing and seeing today is still the war of words, and we need to take a bit, Sorry. The Soleimani issue a bit aside, because we are seeing today pictures that are showing us that on the one hand, Iranians really have anger against the U.S. We are seeing the anger on the street. We are seeing all of the protests. We are seeing the prayers. We are seeing the president calling them a clown. We are seeing the statement from also calling, saying the enemies of the U.S. is trying to weaken us. But the Iranian heads of government are still in a problem because of the plane. So they're taking today, from what we're seeing, the U.S., the war against the U.S., and taking it into the plane issue. So Khamenei, the Supreme Leader, is talking that yes, this was a harsh incident. Yes, it was a mistake. But he's saying that our enemies are taking this advantage and trying to weaken us. So this is, I think, the story of today. Yes, we are having the conflict on the U.S., but it's a bit not the Soleimani issue right now. Now it's a story, the protest on the recent week, in the Iranian streets, and Khamenei coming up and saying, listen, we saw Trump tweeting that he supports you. We see Trump and other officials say, go out and protest. But listen, don't trust them. They will leave you at the end. They won't be with you. He's trying to crumble the internal problems rather than, taking it up to fight the Soleimani.
Right, Amichai, in that sense, what happens now? It's the first time the Supreme Leader of Iran has addressed prayers in capital Tehran in 8 years. And do you think that the Iranian public will buy this at this point in time? Because the kind of anger we witnessed on the streets doesn't seem like they would.
So like you said, it's a very rare occasion that the Supreme Leader is coming to heading their prayers. 8 years, he didn't do it. He's coming up now and again. It's probably because the anger we saw in the last week in Iran. But the question again, in the beginning of the week, we had a lot of protests, a lot of riots, even in the central Iranian capital. But it seems it's a bit gone down. We do see here and then, for example, reports of funerals of the people that were killed in the plane. So the let's call it an explosive device, maybe waiting to, there's a possibility it will explode. So we hear and we see there are now clips of protests and, like I said, funerals. So it's still an issue. But I think internally he succeeded in breaking this story up, the potential of maybe this story being completely explosive against the government, against the leadership. Now he has, I think the events today is kind of a closure regarding the Iranian people, the story of the plane and the Iranian people. He will have, of course, the foreign relations with Ukraine, with Canada, with other countries that are playing issues. But I think he succeeded. They succeeded this week really in closing it down internally, rather than again making it a very hot topic and causing it to explode completely.
Right. The only question to be answered here is that how much in unison is the Iranian public with its regime? It's been the most tumultuous time for the regime the last few months, specifically the last few weeks specifically, and the Iranian public were protesting against the government even last year, even before the recent escalation. And now you're seeing a revival of those protests. So in that sense, do you think there is a tangible threat to the Iranian regime at this point of being toppled by a revolution?
So let's take about the extreme scenario. The extreme scenario of toppling the government by the people. I think this is much more further away. And again, the protests we saw this week, it's not massive as the protests we saw, for example, 2 months ago. You remember, they closed the internet completely for almost a week. So there were reports about 2,000 people killed in these protests. So it's completely distant from what we're seeing this week. And again, I think the issue this week wasn't economy. This was trust against in front of the government. So this time they succeeded in really not causing it to be such a huge issue, just such a huge protest. But we're seeing every 2 months such an event that causes protest inside Iran, internal turmoil. And the question is again, like I think you said, like experts believe, how much longer they can manage this issue. So suddenly the Europeans come out and saying maybe we're going to put sanctions, so the economic situation is going to be much more worsened in the city, with the people. So we'll need to see how much gap is between these events, because again, we're seeing in the last about 2 months gap. Now maybe the economics and the trust and more issues will cause them to be much more frequent, and then maybe the big scenario, at possibly toppling of the government. But again, this is a very far-fetched option right now.
Amichai Stein joining us live from Jerusalem in Israel with a perspective. Thank you, Amichai, for being with us here on WION World.